September the 24th, regular council meeting. I look on the schedule here to see what we got for our calendar. Okay, this Friday, next Friday, October the 4th is Art After Dark from 6 to 9. Put that on your calendar. And then our next board meeting will be Tuesday, October the 8th. Regular scheduled board meeting at 6 o'clock here at Town Hall. Okay. Public comment? No public comment? I love you. Okay, we'll move on to additions or deletions to the agenda. Do we need to?
Yes, Mayor, I move that we delete item E3 from the agenda and move it to the October 8th agenda.
That's what I was thinking. We needed to do an amendment on that. Okay, got a motion?
Second.
Second. Anthony, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show like sign. Okay, move on to consent agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve this consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion second for Julia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show like sign. So ordered. Skip number 3. Move on to number 4. All right, this is our local government workplace initiative. Clay Fleming, would you mind coming up and speaking tonight on behalf?
I'm almost there.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay.
You're on my watch now instead of you. That's right, Julia.
Absolutely, sir.
You're on my watch.
All right. Well, thank you all for allowing me to be here today. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to talk about the work that we have done with Grapevine. It's been, I can also speak up a little bit if that helps too.
Okay.
I can speak up.
Okay.
There you go.
So as I was saying, it's been really great working with everyone. Paige and Brittany have been a tremendous help through this process. I'm really glad to have met them and have worked with them. And yeah, it's been really good. I'm excited to share these results with you. So just so you're aware, these are very high level results for the organization, and I think that you'll find them to be interesting. So my name is Clay. You obviously know that. I work for the UNC School of Government, specifically with the Local Government Workplaces Initiative. And so we are a program of research at UNC, and our main goal is to help local governments listen to their employees and act on that feedback. And so that's really what we are working on with you all. And so we've been doing this since 2012. Alicia has been with the School of Government since 2012. Alicia has been doing this, who is the director of the Local Government Workplaces Initiative. She's been doing this for more than 20 years now, actually. And our main thing is the employee survey. We do additional things like we can do interviews with employees, we can do focus groups, we can also do analyze some HR data if that's something that's needed. And then just so that you're aware of sort of our history over the past 20 years, we have surveyed over 35 local governments and have surveyed over 19,000 employees in local government. So we have we've been doing this a long time. It's tested with local governments. It's all about things that they find interesting. So that's something that I feel very proud of and want to make sure that's mentioned. So as an overview of today, we're going to talk a little bit very quickly about why we survey employees, why that's important, and then also what workplace climate surveys are and what they are not. And then I'll give an overview, like a refresh of the process, of the survey process, just so that way you have that information. And then we'll start getting into the results. We'll go through highlights, hotspots, and mixed results, which I will share what that means a little bit later. And then lastly, we'll talk about those next steps. Okay. So the biggest reason why it's important to survey employees, and you all know this, you obviously found it very interesting, is so that you can understand an employee's voice. You can hear from these employees and understand what it's like to work for the organization. So to analyze and assess the workplace climate. What is it like as an employee to work for the town of Waynesville? It's also to evaluate the employee morale. So how do I feel as an employee in my workspace? So that's the other reason. And then last, it's really to identify both the strengths and areas of opportunities. And that's something that definitely comes out of these. And then one of the things that we make sure it is a critical piece, almost like a foundation of what we do, is we don't want to enter into this process if there's no plan to act on the results. And based on conversations with the department directors, based on conversations with Paige and Brittany and with Mr. Heights, they are dedicated to that. And I'm very proud to say that they are. They're dedicated to making some changes or working to act on these results. So I want to talk a little bit about what workplace climate surveys are not. And this is very important. This is whenever we begin speaking with our department heads at the very beginning, we make sure to kind of set these expectations of what workplace climate surveys are not. And so it is not a report card of any one individual, any one leader in the organization. There is no way that you can assign any type of blame on any individual leader, department head, anything like that. We understand that there are dozens of factors that go into workplace situations or issues. There are all kinds of factors that play a major role into what can show up in a workplace climate survey. So we want to make sure it's very clear that it is not the responsibility of one person. It is also not a 360-degree evaluation of any leader. So that usually requires talking about that individual's specific leadership styles. So that's something that we want to make sure is pretty clear. So what workplace climate surveys are? So it is a holistic view of the organization at a given time. You can't make changes if you don't know what's going on. And so that's why these are very important. You get a view of the entire organization, not just the individuals who frequently speak up. It's hopefully everyone. That's the aim. The other piece is it's an assessment of both the strengths of the organization, because those are really important to know. It's really important to understand what you're doing well. What are things that make you stand out as an organization? So that way you can continue to foster those strengths. It's also a time to understand what are these opportunities for improvement. And so that's also a critical piece. Like I said earlier, you can't make changes if you're not aware of what's going on. And then lastly, it's to show that you value the employee's perspective and their voice. It's so that they know as an employee, I'm important to this organization. My thoughts and opinions matter. That's a really important piece. That's what workplace climate surveys are. Okay. So now to kind of to talk through some of the process. So the survey was open from May 13th through June 3rd. And we have been working with Paige and Mr. Heights and Jesse to kind of talk through some of the results and dig a little deeper as needed. So some follow-up questions were there. So it's a back and forth process. We provide initial results, and then they have questions for us, and we go back and forth for a little bit. The other piece that's really exciting is that all survey participants received 40 points towards their wellness passport, which is really exciting because I think there's a certain amount of points that if they reach that amount, they get a certain amount of gift card. If I'm remembering that correctly. Yeah, okay. So that's really exciting. The other piece that I want to share that you can see up here are the response rates. So we had a 66% response rate, which is really good for a first-time surveying organization. Typically, they land around 50-55% whenever we're working with an organization who it's their first time surveying their employees. So this is a really good response rate. So I think you all should be pretty proud of that. And then we also have the breakdown of each department up there as well for you.
I make a comment about Parks and Rec. It looks like they have a low rate, but that's actually high because they have a tremendous amount of part-time employees. So I just want
I'm glad you said that because part-time employees were included in this. And when working with other organizations, we do see that part-time or temporary employees aren't as likely to respond. There's not as much commitment to that. So I'm very glad you said that. That's very true. Okay. So now we'll start getting into some of the results. I actually have some handouts, so I'm going to walk and pass those out. Okay, so what you're looking at, this first page, it's almost like a glossary, if you think about it that way. So this first page, these are all the different survey categories that we have. So we have different questions that relate to these different survey topics. So that's on the first and back, and it gives just a very quick definition of what these topics mean. On the back, there's more details about the results interpretation, and so I'm also going to talk through that as well through this presentation. But I just wanted you to orient you to that. The other document that you have this is a report of the organization-wide results. So it's a quick report, so that way you can reference it if you need. Yeah. All right, so we will keep going. So in terms of results interpretation, this is something that is really important to make sure that I communicate and get across. So we have a 80-20 rule that we follow for our results. So we classify each question in terms of good, excellent, and room for improvement. To be able to determine what is good or excellent or room for improvement is this 80-20 rule. And so for something to be excellent, at least the results have to be at least 80% positive and no more than 20% negative. For something to be good, it has to be at least 80% positive or is the different piece here, or no more than 20% negative. The reason that or is critical is because we don't include some of our neutral categories in the calculation. So that's why that or is important. And then for something to be classified as a room for improvement, it has to be less than 80% positive and more than 20% negative. So this is this 80-20 rule. That's how we arrive at what is considered good, excellent, or room for improvement. And the reason this is important, this is what we use to be able to distinguish what is these high remarks, some of these middle categories, and then some of these like lower things that need to be improved. So it's all about performance on the specific question. One other thing that I want to make sure I mention while I go through this is if it is blue, represented as blue, that means it is a positive response. And if it is highlighted as orange, that means it's a negative response. So, all right. All Right, so this next piece, I mentioned highlights, hotspots, and mixed results earlier. So for something to be considered a highlight, this means that all of the responses for that category, all of the questions that belong to that category need a designation of either good or excellent. So I'll say that again. For each category, every question that relates to that category, if it has a designation of good or excellent, it is considered a highlight. For something to be a hotspot, every question in that category will have a designation of room for improvement. And then for mixed results, it's what it sounds like. There's a mixture of good, excellent, room for improvement. We will display that with a number next to it. That number represents it's displayed as like a fraction almost. So it will be the number of positive designations, so those good or excellent, out of all the questions for that category. This may be a lot right now. It is a lot right now. The more we talk through it, the more you see it, I think it'll start to make a little bit more sense. Okay, so this right here, what you're looking at is the Waynesville townwide results. These are all of these categories on this page classified as either a highlight, a hotspot, or a mixed result. So give you some time to kind of take that in, and then I'll start talking about them. Okay. So this chart, the first thing I want to say about it is a jumping off point. It is not the results. These are not the results. These are how we group the results in a way that helps people understand where they need to dig a little bit deeper. It's a way to easily kind of classify, this is how we need to move forward. These are things we need to consider and look at. So I want to start with the highlights. So these are, like I said earlier, every single question from these categories, so diversity, climate, inclusion, team climate, all of them had a rating of either good or excellent. So these are things that are going really well. And it's not typical for an organization to have team climate as a highlight. So I want to make sure that that's stated, because that's something to celebrate as well. For the hotspots, like I said earlier, a hotspot is when all of the questions from a category have a designation of room for improvement. So you can see I have some asterisks beside some of these topics. So citizen incivility, commitment, emotional exhaustion, silence, top-down decision-making, and voice. These are all hotspots, or are all typical hotspots for organizations that we work with. So these are very typical to fall into a hotspot area whenever we're surveying people or organizations. Psychological safety is one that can either be a hotspot. Most of the time, it falls into the mixed results category, but it's not unusual for it to be a hotspot either. And then trust in administration, trust in council, and trust in department head. These are unique questions to you all. We don't typically survey these. And I think once we start looking at the results, you understand a little bit more why they are there, why they fell where they did. Okay. So in terms of mixed results, so communications, it says 1 out of 5. So I want to explain that one more time. So that means one of those 5 questions had a designation of good or excellent. So we asked 5 total questions around communication. One of those had a designation of good or excellent. Another way to think about that is 4 out of 5 had room for improvement. And then to make matters even more complicated, another way to consider it is 1 out of 5 is close to being a hotspot. Whereas when you look at teamwork, 2 out of 3, that means it's close to being a highlight. So these are just different ways to kind of understand. And again, this is meant to be, okay, let's go see what that one question is in teamwork where we may have some room for improvement. So just initially, when I look at this, things that I notice are that you have strong team dynamics, that the team dynamics are really strong. You have team climate as a highlight, you have inclusion as a highlight. So these are really good. A lot of your hotspots are typical hotspots for most every organization. Some of the ones that may be more unique to you, they're either a mixed result or they're a hotspot. They're not typically in the highlights. So these results are pretty typical compared to most organizations. One of the things that Leisha also likes to say is whenever you survey employees for the very first time, it's like going to the dentist after 5 years. They're going to find stuff. Things aren't going to be as exciting or as pretty as you may want. And these are still really good results overall once we start looking at some of the actual percentages. Okay, let's keep going. So I think I've already talked through most of these. Yeah, so communications from the manager, that is very common in local governments to be a room for improvement. That's one specific question in the communications category. It's very common for local governments to have that as a room for improvement. Same with dissatisfaction with pay and opportunities to advance. So these are things that we recognize are on trend with every other organization that we work with. All right, so now we'll go through and look at some of the highlights. So here for diversity climate, you can see what we mean by all of those questions have a designation of good or excellent. In this case, they're all good. So these are really good. So these questions really get at how people from different identities or backgrounds feel in the workplace, how they are maybe respected or how they are evaluated and whether or not it's fair. So overall, these are really good results. With inclusion, this is about how I, as an individual in my workplace, also feel in the workplace. So do I feel included? So you can see the questions here are, I can share my thinking on issues that is different from my group, my work group. I feel a sense of belonging within my work group. I feel connected to everyone in my work group. So these are really good things to have. There's that cohesion, there's that team cohesion. And then the last piece is around team climate. So in our team, so team climate is a little bit different because this is about your working team, the people that you work with every single day. So in our team, relationships are good. In our team, we get along with each other. And then in our team, we help and support each other when needed. So you have 2 excellence there. And so it's really great to see excellence. Goods are also really good, but excellence are obviously excellent because that means more than 80% feel this way, have that positive response. So this is really great that these team dynamics are strong. Okay, so now we're going to go into hotspots. So the first one is attitudes towards the organization. So I'm going to read the questions. I would recommend the town of Waynesville to friends and family as a great place to work. The town of Waynesville values me as an employee. Waynesville is a fun place to work. When I tell others where I work, I feel proud. So some of these that I want to talk about is that in our data, we see a lot of results around people finding value in the organization or feeling valued, and just their general attitudes towards the organization is related to their tenure. The longer people have been with the organization, they're usually less likely to feel as positive about their organization. So that's something that could be happening here. And I would say many of these seem to be pretty on par with some other organizations that we've talked to or that we've surveyed. This is not a question that we ask every single organization. We've started adding it actually because of you all. And people found it interesting. So we've started to see that these are it usually falls into a mixed result. Okay. The next one is around citizen incivility. So I have citizen incivility is something that is really growing, has been growing. We've seen in our data that has become a big issue for every single local government. Community members are being rude to employees, to government employees. We've seen it growing in our data. Since it really began with like the pandemic. That's when things really started to increase. That's sort of the point where we saw, yeah, this is becoming a real hot topic. And so every single organization has citizen incivility as a hotspot that we have surveyed. And so some of what I want to say is that based on some of the comments from the survey, it does seem like employees are getting repeat callers or things like that from employees who may not be following some of like the guidelines that you all have. I know, like I'm thinking of an easy example of maybe like garbage. People aren't putting their garbage cans out at the appropriate times, and so they'll call and be really angry towards some of these employees. And so I think that's something that is something that is happening in every organization, and there are things that you can do about it to kind of hold employees accountable if they don't put their garbage can out at the appropriate time. Sorry, we've already been there. We're not going to go back because you missed your time. So maybe next week, stuff like that. I think you all probably experience some citizen incivility too. You probably get people calling you and feeling very angry or saying mean things to you as well. So I think you can relate to this as well.
That's the understatement of this whole thing.
Right. Yeah. And so for community members out there, think about this. These are people. These are people who are working and trying their hardest to provide you services. Like, think about that. It's not. There's no reason to be uncivil, I guess, in my opinion. So, and one of the things that I also want to kind of talk about is there are potentially ways that you all could be contributing to this too. If you hear from some of these employees who are being rude to you, you're still a little upset or uptight based on that, you may not approach a employee with the usual tone that you would have because you still have those built up emotions from your own personal incivility. So just think about that as well, and how to, whenever you're speaking with or working with employees. Sorry to kind of offer some advice there, but yeah, I just want to. It is a really hot topic issue, and it's in our data. It is the number one correlation. It's the thing that we see that most likely predicts exhaustion. So exhaustion was another hotspot for you all. We see citizen incivility being the leading cause of why people are exhausted, emotionally exhausted. And these instances of citizen incivility can lead to probably some other factors of why why some of these other hotspots may be showing up, like commitment or psychological safety. These things they can play together and can build off of each other. So citizen incivility is something that is really a big hot topic issue. Okay, we'll keep going. So the next one is commitment. So I would be very happy to spend the rest of my career with the town of Waynesville. I wouldn't leave this organization right now because I have a sense of obligation to the people in it. And I'm thinking about leaving the town of Waynesville. So there are two things. You can see that they're kind of switched. That's because for the first two questions, strongly disagreeing with those statements is the negative response. Whereas with the third question, I'm thinking about leaving the organization. agreeing with that statement is the negative response. So I just want to make sure that it's clear. The other piece around I'm thinking about leaving the organization. One of the things that we don't ask in the survey is like, so what are some of these factors? So people could be thinking about retirement, and of course they're thinking about leaving the organization. They're ready to retire. So that's something to consider as well. I also looked up some other organizations that we've surveyed within like the past 4 years, just to see what other responses are to this. And the average is around 25% agreement. So that's not, you're not, I think the highest that we have was around 35, 36. So you're right there, I would say probably around average for most every organization. The other piece that I want you to look at is our cutoff is 20%. It's more than 20%. That is considered a hotspot or a room for improvement, excuse me. 60% are very proud or are happy to spend the rest of their career with the town of Waynesville. I don't want that to get lost because that's very good. 60% of your employees are happy to spend the rest of their careers with Waynesville. So that's something that I want you to really be proud of as well. Okay. So the next is around employee engagement. So employee engagement is about whether or not a person feels energized or inspired by their work. And we also see strong correlations with employee engagement and exhaustion and citizen incivility. So people aren't feeling as inspired by their work typically because of they're exhausted because they're either overworked, they have so much going on, don't have sufficient staff to be able to spread the like workload amongst an appropriate amount of people. And then citizen incivility, they're not as engaged because why would I be if I'm being treated poorly by community members who I'm supposed to be helping or who I enjoy helping? So that's something that I want to just share about engagement. So emotional exhaustion. This is also, I think I've already said this, but this is a hotspot in most every organization as well. People are exhausted. They're feeling burned out. They feel emotionally drained from their work. They feel fatigued when they get up in the morning and have to face another day, and they feel used up at the end of the workday. I've already mentioned a couple of factors that or themes that came from the survey comments about emotional exhaustion. It's around workload. Many employees feel like they're taking on a lot of different jobs, that they're a lean and mean staff, and they're very proud of that. At the same time, it's exhausting. And so that's one of the main themes that is occurring with emotional exhaustion in this organization that I've seen. So not having enough staff, and then the workload as well. So staffing and workload, I see those as separate. Okay. Psychological safety. So this is again one of those where some of the questions, the negative response is one direction and then positive response is the other. So just want to make sure that's clear. Okay. Psychological safety, if you're not familiar, is about interpersonal relations. It's, do I, as a person, feel comfortable, feel safe to show up, ask questions, make mistakes, learn from others without fear of retribution, retaliation, or fear of judgment or shame? So can I show up as an individual and ask questions, learn without this fear attached to it? Do I feel safe to do that? One of the things that we've started to realize as we have been surveying employees is that a lot of individuals in public safety sectors don't read this as, don't read taking a risk as interpersonal, they see it in the scope of their jobs, which makes sense. And so taking a risk in some of these public safety jobs it can have some pretty bad results. And so that's something that could be contributing to some of these results. And I want to acknowledge that, again, our cutoff is 20%. And we do that as a way to classify and acknowledge what are the hotspots and acknowledge what needs room for improvement, but I don't want that to overshadow that there are a good majority of people who are seeing this as feeling this psychological safety in their workspaces. Okay. I'm gonna drink more water because my mouth is very dry. So this next category is around silence. So we like to talk about the silence also in the context of employee voice, because they kind of go hand in hand. Same with top-down decision-making. We could classify those together. So when I say silence, what that means is, for whatever reason, employees deliberately choose not to speak up whenever they have a concern or whenever they have a question. They choose to remain silent. So in terms of voice, what that means is, do I as an employee have the opportunity to speak up and share my voice in the organization? And so we'll look at that a little later. So based on some of the themes from the survey, it does seem that there are two main factors which are pretty common in other organizations. There's this fear of retaliation. If I speak up, I'm going to get in trouble because X, Y, and Z didn't agree with what I said. So they choose to stay silent. That is occurring a little bit based on some of the comment themes. The other piece is people have spoken up before and their opinions weren't heard and so or considered, and so it becomes more futile to speak up, and they begin to wonder, well, what's the point? And we hear this from a lot of organizations, so I'm sure that's clear. It's very typical for many organizations to have those two themes. Whenever I forgot to say this at the beginning, so I want to say it now. Whenever I'm talking about the survey comments or any type of qualitative data, not every employee will leave a comment. So what that means is that these qualitative data points, these comments, cannot be generalized to the whole organization. These are pieces that may be some realities for some of the employees, but you cannot say that every employee is experiencing this. We bring up these themes because it is important to have at least some kind of context about what may be contributing to some of these results. So I want to make sure that's pretty clear. Okay. So the next one is around supervisory practices. This is one especially where I want you to kind of acknowledge, yes, there's area for improvement. There is. And there is a lot of really positive happening here in these supervisory practices. So again, that's why I say whenever you look at that very first slide where it divides things into highlights, hotspots, and mixed results, it is a jumping point into looking at the data. So a lot of really positive stuff, even if there is some room for improvement. Okay. The next one is around top-down decision-making. So whenever we say top-down decision-making, this is, do employees feel like decisions are being made at a higher level than they need to be? And so this is another very common hotspot for many organizations. So even small matters have to be referred upward for a final answer, things like that. So I do not, as an employee, may not feel that I can make a decision about something that's totally within the scope of my job. And so some common reasons for that is there could be some micromanagement. There could just be a person who's like, well, we need to make sure that everyone on the team is aware of this decision, and employees can mistake that as, no, you have to tell me first, rather than it's something that we just need to be kept in the loop. Okay. So trust. So I have trust in council, administration, and department director on this. So one of the things that I want to point out and make sure that is shared is these results make sense. So when you think about a frontline employee who's taking this survey, they probably don't interact with you as the council or the town manager or assistant town manager, even sometimes their department heads on a regular basis. So these results make sense. The further you are from the top of that organization, it makes sense that you're not going to have a lot of trust within those people because you're so far from that position. The other piece that when it comes to council, it's employees listen to what you say. They pay attention to your actions, and based on what is said or what you do, they assume some of their value to the organization based on that. So these can be things like budget decisions. Well, they approved, I don't know, for whatever department, that means they don't care about my department. Whether or not that is right, it's not always clear, and it is stuff that happens. So for you all, this is something to keep in mind too, is people see and listen to what you're saying, and they really they assign their value to the organization based on that. So that's something that's important. I also want to show that, going back to my earlier point, if you look at the data, you see that as you go from council to administration to department director, the trust level grows. Again, this is a trend you would expect because, like I said, they're closer to those, or it's getting closer to those employees. Okay. We'll keep going. So voice, we talked about this earlier. So do I, as an employee, feel like I have a voice in the organization or contribute to important decisions? This is another really common one. And actually, I would say that yours is probably on the lower end compared to other organizations that we've worked with. So that's really good. And one of the things that it does seem that some of the themes that are showing up when I look at the overall data is around decision making. What is the employee's process for providing input into decisions? So maybe it needs to be more formalized in different ways. So that's something that I want to make sure is clear. And the last is workplace incivility. So like citizen incivility, this is with coworkers being rude to each other. I think based on some of the themes in the comments, what I've seen is some of this workplace incivility could be contributed to some potential favoritism that may exist within some pockets of the organization. I definitely wouldn't say it's overall. And again, a lot of this is still really positive and there's areas for growth. I don't think that when thinking through all the comments, I don't remember any very overt rudeness. Mostly just seems perceptions of favoritism. Okay. So we're almost there. So mixed results. So communication. This is asking about the adequacy of communication from different areas of the organization. Again, this is one of those instances where I mentioned at the very beginning that communication from the town manager is usually a room for improvement because they don't interact with those individuals. Another interesting piece is based on doing like focus groups with other organizations, employees don't necessarily know what they want communicated to them or how they want it communicated. There's this feeling that it's not enough or that I want more. And whether or not they check their emails or is also can play a role into that. So council requests. So the one room for improvement here was I get requests directly from council members that are within my job responsibilities. So I don't really know that this is a, because this is a question that comes specifically from you, we still follow our same pattern. So I don't necessarily know that this is a room for improvement unless you are asking people without going through the proper process. That could be a bit more, that could be where this is coming from. I didn't see any themes or things from the comments about this, so mission and values. So this is about awareness of the mission and values for the organization and the vision. And I think this is pretty clear that maybe it can be communicated a little bit more. Maybe employees aren't as aware, or they just don't think about it pretty regularly. And so this is a part two to this question. So the way it worked in our survey, depending on what they answered for the specific questions, was whether or not they answered this. So some employees might have been filtered out of this because they didn't have the awareness. So this is of the people who have an awareness of these different elements, they are included in this. So the two room for improvement are the town provides adequate resources for achieving the town's mission and values. And then town leaders make decisions consistent with the town's mission, vision, and values. Okay. So this next one, reason for staying. So employees are very passionate and are staying in the organization because they see how they are impacting the community. They care about their community. That was a very common theme from the survey comments. They talk about how it's home. They feel really connected to the people, not just in the organization. And they're still seeing the citizen and civility, so I want to keep that there. They really care about these people, and so that's why it creates this little tension of this rudeness, and I care about you. So, because it makes me feel good to serve the community, that's another reason. And because it provides a steady paycheck and benefits. And then the last is because of the people and culture. So one of the things that I want to acknowledge with this one is employees could interpret people as community members, or they could interpret it as their coworkers. And so I think later in the slides, I think teamwork is one of the mixed results. And the one piece of teamwork is about, I think the one room for improvement around teamwork is about working with individuals in other departments. So interdepartmental versus intra. And so that could be what's contributing to this. All right, the resources. So the staffing to do the work expected of us was a room for improvement. The technology, equipment, or materials to do my job effectively, room for improvement. And then the time to take care of myself mentally and physically. So especially staffing is one that shows up very common. I feel like I've said that many times already today. So, and then the time to do my work effectively and the training. So the training is a really good thing to have as a positive because training is very crucial. And in focus groups with other organizations, I hear people talking about how they want more training. There's not access to some of these training opportunities. So the next one is around rules. So these, Leisha, I want to brag on Leisha. She actually wrote the book on effective rulemaking. So I want to highlight that for her. And so these are the different characteristics of effective rulemaking. And so whenever we say this, does the rule have a clear purpose? Is it logical? Does it make sense? is it written? Can people access it and read it? Is it consistently applied? Is it effective? Is it accomplishing what it's intended to accomplish? And then is it reasonable? So the two room for improvement were consistently applied and effective. And so those go hand in hand a little bit, because if they're not being consistently applied, they're not going to be as effective. So those two can play off of each other. We also see consistently applied as a room for improvement very important as well. The next piece is around satisfaction with job rewards. So the room for improvement, my pay. I think you were expecting this. Recognition for a job well done, the opportunity to advance. And so these last three were around specific benefits or opportunities. The employee assistance program was the one room for improvement. But overall, everybody had very positive comments about the benefits. I could see them being very thankful about what is the word that I'm looking for? Spouse. The dependent, that's the word, the dependent coverage, being very thankful and appreciative of that. So that's something that I want to make sure is very clear. And the opportunity to do meaningful work is something that's really good too. Okay. Social support. So people avoid blaming others and forgive mistakes. This is very common to be a room for improvement too. People are quick to want to blame others for certain things that may go awry. People care for and are interested in and maintain responsibility for one another as friends. And then people provide support for one another. Again, this shows that you have a very strong social network within the organization, that people really are very passionate about taking care of one another. They really care about their coworkers. And then teamwork. So other departments work well with my department, the one room for improvement. So while within their own departments, things are going well, there may be some hiccups whenever it comes to interdepartmental collaboration. And it's still a majority positive. So I want to make sure that. And then the last one, I hope I'm not wrong, is work-life balance. So usually this is a hotspot for organizations, work-life balance. I don't know why I didn't say that earlier. It does seem that people feel that their supervisors and that their coworkers are really, really hoping or wanting employees to take care of themselves. And with this room for improvement, how I see that is they're not able to, and based on the other results, it's most likely due to the workload and not having sufficient staffing. All right. So reflections, next steps, and then we'll get to questions, because I'm sure you have a lot, which I'm very excited about. Okay. So just what have we learned? Team dynamics are strong within departments. There are some challenges when it comes to interdepartmental collaboration. Employees appreciate the health and dental insurance and making a difference in their community. These are things that are really good. Some challenges with employee voice, silence, and top-down decision-making. These are challenges with a lot of organizations, especially if it's not routinely practiced, or there aren't some more formal structures in that way. And then some dissatisfaction with staffing levels, pay, and opportunities for advancement. We know within local government organizations, they're typically very flat. There's not usually a lot of room for growth. And so many of our other organizations are seeing this as a challenge as well. And so they have to be more creative about what does advancement look like? How can we think differently about advancement? Is that a new skill? Is that maybe you go shadow a different department for the day or something like that? Just so that way they are still developing some skills. And then citizen incivility. It is pervasive in many local governments in Waynesville, and can cause significant exhaustion for employees if it's unmanaged. Okay, and so the next step, so we are currently doing focus groups with different departments. I had 4 yesterday and I have 3 more tomorrow. So I will be providing updates on those results in the coming weeks. I will say I'm already enjoying it. We have great employees. I really enjoy talking to all of them so far. We also had a department director meeting this morning about some of these results. We started with more of a Q&A, so that way I was present, so that way they could ask me questions and get clarity. And then we did sort of a brainstorming activity. If you're familiar with like a design sprint or design thinking, we went through that process a little bit to kind of start developing ideas about how to begin addressing some of these topics. And then the department directors will be working with Paige and Brittany to develop some SMART goals around their own departments. And then, so the next one is really, we've completed this portion of the contract and agreement. We being LGWI, y'all have things that you would like us to work on or that you have thought about that maybe you might want some assistance from us? And then the next piece is questions. So we can start with my question and we'll get to your questions. Or if you don't have any ideas, that's fine. If you think of it later, you can email me.
If you have any questions.
I'm thinking still, so I don't want to say something out of turn, or as with anything, some of the results are contradicting to one another.
Okay.
And I would like to dig more deep into those items.
Sure.
As you know.
Yeah.
So overall, it is exactly what I expected.
Okay.
And there were no surprises. But I believe that we've already started making some significant changes within our organization and the town that this will improve dramatically next year.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I have the utmost faith in our department heads and in our employees. We go above and beyond to always thank our employees, and we do have the best employees anywhere, and I'm very grateful for our employees. And it's very encouraging that they felt safe to take the survey. And I'm looking forward to them growing within the town and within themselves. But I have a lot more to say, but I'll hold
I mean,
on.
do we want to just dive in? Let's go for it.
Go for it.
No, I think they were telling you.
Oh, me to dive into it?
Yeah, let's
Yes.
dive into it.
I don't like us being average, and I know I don't like being average. I want us to be exceptional.
Okay.
And I want to know what we can do to make our employees feel better about themselves, about their work. And the big question is, do you have any idea of how to assist with citizen incivility? That's huge. It impacts us. I know it impacts us, but it's disheartening that it's affecting our employees.
Mhm.
I sometimes think that we should be the buffer within the community, and we take all the heat and stop it from impacting our employees. Our employees are doing the best that they can with the resources they have. And without raising taxes tremendously, we can't give them 100% what they need.
Mhm.
So it's this spiral of incivility within the community, and it's very disheartening. And the same people that blame us are the ones that are causing the incivility to our employees. So it's counterproductive to blame everyone. And I want to know what we can do to lift our employees up. Sorry.
Would you like me to go ahead and address that? Are you comfortable? Are you all comfortable with me addressing that? Okay. So citizen incivility is, Leisha actually does and a colleague from the School of Government do a webinar on citizen incivility, I think once, maybe every quarter. They just recently had it, so I don't think the next one's for a while. But in that, they talk about some supervisor and managerial strategies. They also talk about some of legal strategies, some things that you can do. The other colleague is one of the lawyers with the School of Government. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to speak on that piece. I would encourage people to attend those webinars. In terms of managerial strategies. One of the things that's most important for supervisors, for you all to be aware of, is that in these instances, employees are going through emotional labor. They are experiencing something very harsh and critical, and they have all kinds of feelings just like inside them. And there are these external expectations of how you need to approach people. So whether it's how you display your face, how you respond, how you talk to employees, that is emotional labor. There are these customer service with a smile, and you're angry or hurt inside. So regulating that or experiencing that, we've seen in some data recently that emotional labor does have mental and physical health impacts, causes an increase in stress. So giving employees the ability to sort of process with people, their coworkers, their supervisors after one of these instances is a way to kind of create a space for them to externalize some of these feelings. The other thing is there may be policies that if there are repeat instances where things are happening and it's a consistent issues, it could be a policy issue. Maybe there needs to be a guideline or something that needs to be changed to protect the employee there. Some of the legal strategies are more around social media, First Amendment rights. So those are other pieces. But the biggest piece is recognizing and educating employees about the emotional labor that they are experiencing and giving them a place where they can talk about it. This is still something we're researching about we're actually seeing to be effective. And when I say we, I mean Leisha. Leisha is studying this. So to go to your other question about being average and how to grow, I think we're already in the process. Like I said earlier, just went to the dentist for the first time after many years. There's going to be things. It's not going to be perfect every time. Now you know the areas that you can work on and begin to prioritize that. So I've already seen the directors working on that just with today. We went through strategies and came up with some pretty good ideas, especially around citizen and civilian. I don't know if I should share any. Okay. One of the ones was around the Citizens Academy. Maybe that needs to be something that it already exists for the police department. Maybe it needs to be opened up to other departments where citizens come in, get to know some of their employees. They learn about the employees there. They learn about what they do, some of the struggles, so that way they can build some of this empathy and really understand. So that was just one of the ideas that's already kind of risen to the surface.
John, you have anything?
I'm gonna get, first of all, I am grateful to you and the School of Government, our fabulous HR staff that really worked so hard to implement this. And I think it is really important. I said, when I suggested we do this, that the only way that I know to find out what our employees are thinking is to ask them. And I'm glad we asked. Now, that said, certainly there are things that surprised me, and particularly as it relates to the level of trust a significant majority of our staff does not have in this council. And I understand and can appreciate the notion that we're kind of on the outside looking in, and we don't really interact with those folks, and so that's going to breed a certain level of distrust in and of itself. But when I see that 61% of our staff distrusts or somewhat distrusts that the council is going to tell the employees what they need to know, certainly it's a major red flag for me. 66% of our staff distrust or somewhat distrust that we would consider the employees in the decision making. And almost over 60% believe that we are not going with they do not trust the council to do what we say we're going to do. And so from my perspective, we got a whole lot of work to do to turn those numbers around, and certainly because in a lot of ways, to me, that may be what they think and perceive, but I can tell you without a shadow of doubt, and I guarantee you that every single one of my fellow council members will back me up on this, is that we do consider them in all the decisions that we make. And Lord, I would hope that we do what we're going to say we're going to do, and that we tell our employees what they need to know. So from my perspective, and I would hope that the rest of the council would join me in this, is that we need to do like you're talking about in maybe do some Q&As and developing SMART goals and brainstorming activity, because I want the staff to know where we stand in relation to them, because they have our back every single day, and I want them to understand that we have their back as well.
And I think there's a lot of validity to that, of getting to know and interact with people and listening. And you now have the opportunity, because you have a lot of information that can help you moving forward. So
The last comment I will make is that I don't want this to be a piece of paper or a report that gets put up on the shelf. I want to make sure that we take these and develop plans to address the issues that we found and have been identified. And I look forward to this time next year when we do this again to see how much progress we made. Because I certainly am committed to doing that, and I know the rest of the council is as well.
and I have faith in the organization making some really positive changes just after what I witnessed today and some of the ideas and the genuine interest in looking and thinking about these pieces very critically. I have significant faith.
Chuck, do you have any questions?
You gave us citywide results. I'm assuming that on the departmental level, they're diving into the results on the departmental level, which could be different.
That's accurate, yeah.
I noticed another thing, which is that there was a percentage of respondents to this who said that council members had made inappropriate requests of them. And in my opinion, that should be 100%, that we don't make inappropriate requests, and that inappropriate request should have been 0. And so that really bothers me quite a bit. And I hope that the department folks will report to the manager if inappropriate requests are made by council members. And if I've made any, please let me know. And then in order to follow up, what kinds of surveys do you recommend?
So typically what we recommend when We do, if you want to continue working with us, we recommend at least a 1.5 to 2 year cycle for the next survey because these things take time. Change takes time. So we want to give you enough time to think critically about these, start making changes, and people to have time to see the changes implemented so that way you can kind of measure that growth. Usually we will ask the same questions, or through the process, we could learn things that, oh, I think I'm causing an issue there. Through the process, we could learn things that may be more unique or interesting to you that we could add on to kind of test some of this as well.
Yeah,
I do, yes. Clay, if you go back to, I think it's slide 32, 33.
Do you know what the title is?
Because I'm
Oh,
going to
it's
piggyback off of
perfect.
what John said. Let's see,
This one or the next one?
let's see.
33 was the one I had.
Okay, well, I'm going back to, I'm going to piggyback off what John said. When I look at the handout that you gave us in the trust in council,
Mhm.
man, this is disturbing. When I look at those numbers, and John uses 60, I'm just talking about distrust. The average between the three questions that were given out is that they distrust us. The average is 36.4%. That breaks my heart. It really does. And I find that, I'm like, wow. And you look back with the breakdown between us, and you look at the breakdown with the administration and the somewhat distrust and the administration component, man, we got to step our game up. And Anthony's right. I don't want to come in second place. I want to come in first place. I want to be number one. And we've got some room for improvement. We have got to step our game up. We've got to reach out to employees and I've been here for almost 14 years and I'm embarrassed about that. And I want to do better and we will do better. And again, hopefully from what you said, from what, we, in a year, I hope that number drops dramatically. If it takes us doing stuff with the department heads, we've got a couple department heads here, at least 3 I see, maybe more, but I can't see out in the audience, but thank you, yes. But we've got to do better on this. And if it comes down to just breaking bread with individuals and listening, we've got to be better at what we're doing. So that's shocking.
And some of this is why we're also doing some of these focus groups so that I can get a little bit more information about maybe what's causing some of this. Why are some of these results showing up the way that they are? So that's part of this focus group process.
It breaks down to communication. We're not communicating with our staff, and we've got to give them, they need to be in the loop 100% on everything that's coming down the pipeline.
Take a second bite at the apple. What was encouraging was the relationship, interdepartmental relationships. And there's a lot to celebrate about this as well. We had some great results, but we just need to build on that as a whole. So it wasn't all doom and gloom. We tend to sometimes focus on what affects us, and what the first thing I did was turn to council, because that's what you're seeing. But there were lots of things that were very positive. But one of the other that I wanted to highlight was the rules. There has to be a way that we can show them that rules are applied consistently. And it seems like we have a lot of employees that really enjoy working for the town. So there's lots of positives to celebrate, but we should also really focus on what to make us better. So that's my second bite.
Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Great work.
You've really
Great work.
done a great,
Awesome.
all of y'all have done a great job. I think this is a step forward just by promoting the survey to the employees. It gives them a little bit of for comfort knowing that we do care, by even initiating, the employee survey. But I felt like as far as the council, I had no idea because myself, I've always felt as an open door. I said, anybody that wants to sit down and talk to me personally or whatever, but I know that we kind of get our information, from staff. We learn whatever, that we learn from staff. We try not to, so much get involved in trying to tell people what to do because that's why we have staff. That's why we have staff to do that, so I think a little bit of that's fear. I think some of the employees is always feared like the board, and we're not that way. We're all personal. Everybody on this board is personal. They're personal and they care about the employees because their employees, we've always said, is the jewel of the town of Waynesville, what they do in the community. We get feedback. We need to probably give feedback to them from what we hear, what they do. That's probably anything that I could feel would be lacking is we probably need to get back, let our staff know that, hey, we heard something on the street that these guys are doing good, whether it's garbage pickup or whatever, they need to hear that. They need to hear that the public out there, because all of us work for the public, every one of us here. We work for the citizens, so they probably need to hear more about what they get regular than the negative. The negative, there's always going to be somebody, out there, that, you're never going to satisfy, or whatever. But we do our best to try to make people trust in us. So,
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything? Well, thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you all. I really appreciate it.
And please get with our human resource folks back there and let them you guys can update us. You can update us on what you feel. It's because you hear it more because you're here every day. We're here the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, so we rely on you guys. So if we're doing anything wrong, you let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to communication from staff. Rob, you have anything for us tonight?
I'm gonna completely change directions. Maybe move from one storm to another.
Okay.
I wanted to give you a update on the potential upcoming weather. Anytime I talk about the weather up here in the mountains, I'm do so with trepidation because it can change almost hourly. But as of 5 o'clock, the Weather Service is predicting that the remnants of Hurricane Helene will make a direct hit on
Hazelwood.
no, of course not. Hazelwood, yeah. I was gonna say Haywood. Hazelwood. Actually, nobody, nowhere else but Hazelwood. And that's the reason I asked Alex to be here so he can comment on that. No, I was trying to say Haywood County. We are predicting between 3 to 4 inches of rain in the next 36 hours. In and of itself, that wouldn't be catastrophic, except that we've already had 3 to 4 inches of rain with that subtropical system that's just come through. So what we've got in the soil will be the equivalent of 6 to 8 inches of rainfall over the last week. That, of course, as you know, softens the soil, makes trees coming down more frequent, and it also causes the most dangerous of all our effects, which is landslide. We expect sustained winds in the valley areas of around 30 miles an hour, with gusts going up as high as 50 over the next 36 hours. Again, with soft soil, that doesn't say a lot to the trees because the leaves are still on the tree. That makes it even more of a problem. the public works staff, when you're talking about giving them a pat on the back, have been cleaning our storm drain as quickly as they can to provide for as much water to go through our storm system as possible. As always, we have our chainsaws gassed up and our chains ready. We had a emergency meeting of our department heads this afternoon just before the board meeting, to go over any preparations. We will probably meet again tomorrow to look at the storm. As far as the reservoir level, our reservoir is in good shape. The easiest way to compare where we are right now is that during Hurricane Ivan, the reservoir rose 17 feet, and we had no flooding into Richland Creek. The biggest danger that our services worry about is incredible rain coming straight down from Eagles Nest and from the mountains, heading straight into Richland Creek and bypassing the reservoir. So we're gonna be keeping an eye on it. We're working in tandem with the county. I think we'll join the county in a kind of a peremptory emergency declaration, and we'll recommend the mayor review that and sign it tomorrow morning. That allows us to collect FEMA money, the first dollar of FEMA money, should we have a FEMA event. That proclamation is already in effect. So if we do have damage, we'll work on damage assessment. That's something Elizabeth Teague's office does as well. And as always, we recommend the folks, it's nice to call the police department if the power's off, but please don't call them every 15 minutes and ask when the power's going to go back. It doesn't help. We can sometimes get 1,000 calls an hour. It blocks the real flow of emergency communication the town has. So please be patient. I'm sorry that it's going to take you a while to get the chicken cooked, but the dispatcher can't help you get your power on any fast. So please make your call. Let us know where you are and your power's off, or that there's a tree down. Then be patient that we'll take the most critical issues first. It is all of electricity's policies that if we have an entire circuit of 1,000 houses out, we will restore the power of that one circuit first, and we'll go to a single house with a single failure last. Matter of getting the most people on with the least amount of it. That would be the case with a tree. If you have a tree on a street that has 4 houses, we may put that tree back while we cut a tree down that has 2,000 cars a day. So please be patient with us and understand we're working as fast as we can. We will bring in workers from other electric cities. We have significant electric outages. We have partners, and please communicate with us if need.
Good job.
Can I make one statement about that? Please, if there's standing water, do not go through standing water.
No.
Or just in general, stay off roads.
Yeah, don't rubberneck the town, for God's sake. The other thing is not just standing. You see pictures of cars in culverts completely flipped over. You can just as easily drive into 3 or 4 inches of rain and there's a live electric wire in it. Please just stay at home. I'm sorry you don't have power, but please don't rubberneck it and drive around and take pictures of the fire department while they're trying to cut a tree off. That doesn't help us. We'll continue to keep y'all informed Candace will do the same. And the county will be working with the Evergreen system to keep the whole county informed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You feel like that it's been so dry that the ground is hard that the water won't absorb it, will stay above and make it flood work.
They believe that the 3 to 4 inches we got last week softened the ground out, and to some extent, I think that's helpful. Because if it was hard as a rock, I agree, it would just roll right over. But we're in kind of our typical situation where the ground is soft. I think the biggest worry I have is soft soil and the leaves are still on the tree. That's
They-
the biggest danger.
They just made a revision to the storm watch. They're now calling for 8 to 12 inches of more rain. Just
No, you have, sir?
Yes,
Okay, all right. Okay, Ms. Town Attorney, do you have anything for us tonight?
I do not.
You do? Okay. I will move on to communication from the staff. I just want to thank each and every one of you guys. I feel like myself that being in my position, I'm very, very fortunate to be surrounded by the most smartest board I've ever worked with in my whole life, you know, and so I just want you guys to know how much I respect all of you and what you do in making decisions, you know, for the citizens of this town. You guys are great. You guys do a great job, and I call you guys the smart ones. I just call the shots, you know. Chuck, you have anything?
What Rob just talked about is another reason we needed the advanced metering, smart meters, because we could communicate with all our customers. We had that, like if you're on Duke Power, you'll be getting text.
True, yeah.
Second thing, I wanted to congratulate the rec department on getting their facility completely changed out to LED lighting.
LED lights, way to go.
I think it's better.
LED bulbs.
And I wanted to make a request of the fellow council members to allow me to work with Rob and Ian, our finance director, and Anthony to come up with a format for a financial statement that we could review each month. Probably maybe put it on the agenda first and then to the consent agenda after. But for a way we could look at previous year and how we're doing in comparison, and also look at our monthly revenues and expenditures to figure out how we're doing on the current year. If I'd like, you know, your approval to do that, if you think that would be okay, I don't have a problem.
Love it.
Okay,
Love the
great.
idea.
Good. You got a full support.
Thank you. That's all.
Julie, you have anything
No,
else?
sir.
John?
I do have one quick thing. If y'all recall out here, to the side of the, town hall, there is the sculpture, the Wayne Trapp celebrating, locomotive sculpture.
Yeah.
And, it is almost completely obscured by a big tree back there. And so I would like to ask the Public Art Commission to consider either moving that to. Okay, cool.
What was supposed to be on the agenda this time and last time, they got bumped back on my list with bringing you an easement to that one and but other things come up.
Do you have a location you can divulge yet?
off of Virginia Avenue.
We've been talking with Coleman about where to put it. I just haven't written the easement.
Cool. And
And then it'll be a lot easier about.
what was the other one?
The pigeon piece that we just did. That's our.
What action do you need of the board?
Easement, approval of easement. But I'm just gonna get with Martha. Been a lot on our.
We've been preoccupied. Yeah. So put it.
I figured our wasn't going anywhere, so the easement's not supposed to.
that might top those two by for the understatement of the evening.
Yes. I think so. I have just one thing, Mayor. As you know, I'm the chair of the French Broad River MPO, and we are revising our memorandum of understanding with the municipalities and the counties. And we'll be bringing that to this board for approval at the next meeting, hopefully. And I'll be visiting all the other municipalities in the region, presenting as well. As part of that, moving forward, I'll be making a presentation each month of what has occurred at the MPO. So,
Weren't you in Rolling Stone magazine? this
yeah,
week?
yes, I would, yes. Just so you,
Just mention.
just to mention, I thought I'd never in my career be quoted in Rolling Stone magazine in an article, but I was in Rolling Stone magazine this month. And I just did an interview with another national magazine that will be coming out.
Are you hearing any more about the South Main? I mean, I got
South Main Street, yes.
interviewed with these guys.
You did an interview with them and they never contact the chair of the MPO, because I oversee all of the projects in Western North Carolina. We worked through escalating and making that a priority through the prioritization subcommittee and the STIP. And it was approved by the full 31-member board to make it one of the priorities for the region, and it made the top 5. So it is at the top of the list for the MPO to get South Main Street completed. And online, I'll be presenting some dire numbers, like Region 13 is a negative $114 million in funding, and we just found out that Region 14 is also negative funding. However, we are keeping South Main Street in the top 5 projects out of probably 200.
You think that would be a step moving it forward from the?
Yes, it was in jeopardy of being put behind, but now it is in the top 5 priorities for the region. I would like to commend our other council members from across the region who see that that is a big need for the town of Waynesville. We had lots of support from across the region to keep that at the top.
Good news there. Okay, if you have anything further, then I'll ask for a motion that we adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Anthony, second by Trust. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, so that's. Thank you all.
Right.
Thank you, Julia.
I know.